Hello. The story I'm going to tell you today took place in Penang, located in northwest Malaysia, one of the country's 13 states. Penang borders the Penang Strait and is divided into two parts, Penang Island and the mainland area of Seberang Perai. The economy of Penang relies heavily on tourism and electronics manufacturing. This place is often called the Emerald Jewel of the Indian Ocean and the Silicon Valley of the East. On the southern side of Penang Island lies a small town called Balak Palo, a fishing port where, every day, fishermen head to the shore to unload their seafood catch, which is then distributed across the country. In this town lived an ordinary family. The head of the household was Mr. To Hock Chun, a 50-year-old man who ran a chicken slaughterhouse. His partner, Tan Su Sim, was 5 years older than him. They had lived together for a long time, but were never legally married and had no children together. Before their relationship, Tan Su Sim had 3 children from a previous marriage. Then, one fateful night in July 2016, a horrific event struck their family, sending shockwaves across Malaysia. It was Saturday, July 16th, 2016, during the Durian Festival, an annual celebration in Malaysia held from early June to late July to mark the durian harvest season. At 2:45 p.m., inside a chicken slaughterhouse on Jalan Binjin in Balak Palo, 15 workers were busy at their tasks, having started work at dawn. The loud hum of machinery filled the air. To cope with the noise, some workers wore earphones, while others donned protective goggles to shield their eyes from splattering debris during the slaughtering process. Each worker had a specific role. Some plucked feathers, others butchered the chickens, and a few sorted and packaged the meat. Everyone worked diligently to maintain product quality and keep up with the demanding pace. Near a corner of the wall, a few rats scurried around scavenging for food, while cockroaches crawled near the machines. The slaughterhouse often operated through the night to meet deadlines, a routine the workers were accustomed to. By 3 a.m., they were still hard at work, but something strange began to dawn on them. Their boss, To Hock Chun, hadn't shown up yet. This was unusual. He typically checked in with the workers, chatting with them and overseeing progress. Curious and concerned, a few workers decided to investigate. They headed to his office, located in a house made from shipping containers right next to the slaughterhouse. When they pushed open the office door, the sight that greeted them was beyond horrifying. The entire family of 4 had been brutally murdered. The scene was drenched in blood, a nightmarish tableau of death that left the workers frozen in terror. Some of the more timid ones screamed in panic, the gruesome images searing into their minds. After regaining their composure, they dialed 999 to report the crime to the police. The piercing sound of sirens soon shattered the early morning silence as a large police force arrived, sealing off the area. The slaughterhouse was housed in a simple tin-roofed warehouse, open on all sides, with piles of chicken feathers stacked outside, an easy landmark to spot. Investigators entered through the main gate and the backyard, where some machines were still running. At the end of a path stood a 2-story container house, constructed from 4 repurposed shipping containers. The first and second floors had bedrooms with windows for ventilation and light. According to the workers, both To Hock Chun's office and bedroom were on the ground floor. Behind a blue and red tin partition, the investigators stepped inside, immediately hit by the overwhelming stench of blood. In the office, chairs were overturned on the floor. In the hallway, a middle-aged man lay motionless under the staircase. Nearby, a younger man and a small child were sprawled lifelessly. The bedroom door on the first floor was wide open, revealing a chaotic mess inside, where a middle-aged woman lay dead on the bed. The scene was soaked in blood, a chilling testament to the violence that had unfolded. The 4 victims were quickly identified. The first was To Hock Chun, 50, the slaughterhouse owner. The second was his partner, Tan Su Sim, 55. The third was Chong Tong, 28, the youngest son of Tan Su Sim from a previous marriage. Chong Tong was married with 2 children, a boy and a girl. The fourth victim was Chong Ngi, just 2 years old, Chong Tong's eldest son. Though Chong Tong's family didn't live at the slaughterhouse, They occasionally visited Tan Su Sim and To Hock Chun for a few days. On this tragic day, Chong Tong had brought his son along, never imagining they'd meet such a devastating fate. At the crime scene, police recovered 11 bullet casings. The killer had used a Smith & Wesson handgun, manufactured in the United States. Forensic reports revealed that the 4 victims were shot a total of 6 times, all dying instantly. To Hock Chun had been shot in the arm and chest, with a fatal wound to the chest and scratches on his face. The other 3 victims were each shot in the head, killed on the spot. The brutality of the scene suggested the perpetrator had no intention of sparing anyone, mercilessly taking lives from the elderly to the young. The 15 workers present at the time were engrossed in their tasks and hadn't noticed an intruder. The loud machinery drowned out any gunshots or cries for help. Later, investigators reviewed the slaughterhouse's security footage. At around 2:45 a.m., a man was seen calmly entering To Hock Chun's office. An argument ensued, after which the man stormed out in anger. He returned shortly after, this time with a gun in hand. He entered the office and shot To Hock Chun, then proceeded to the bedroom and killed Tan Su Sim as she lay in bed. Hearing the gunshots, Chong Tong rushed downstairs to investigate, his curious 2-year-old son trailing behind. The killer, hearing footsteps, hid and ambushed them, shooting both father and son dead as they descended. Afterward, he casually walked out, took To Hock Chun's Toyota parked outside, and drove off. Using surveillance footage, police swiftly identified the murderer, Chong Chun Hua, the eldest son of Tan Su Sim. The revelation stunned the peaceful town of Balak Palo. Residents were gripped by fear and unease, worried they might be the next targets. The blood ties between the killer and his victims left people both heartbroken and outraged. The motive remained a mystery as the investigation deepened, uncovering more chilling details. Chong Chun Hua was born in 1984 in Penang, Malaysia, making him 32 at the time of the crime. He lived an aimless, solitary life, often in a drug-induced haze, having been addicted to methamphetamine since a young age. As a child, he displayed rebellious tendencies, ignoring his family's guidance and falling in with local gangs. He frequently skipped school, got into fights, and was shunned by peers, eventually spiraling into addiction. Whenever he ran out of money, he'd show up at the slaughterhouse to beg his mother and stepfather for cash. Though Tan Su Sim knew her son was troubled, she still loved him dearly, often giving in to his demands. Not long before the murders, she'd bought him a motorcycle, hoping he'd use it to earn a living as a motorbike taxi driver. Instead, Chong Chun Hua found it inconvenient, sold the bike, and used the money to buy the handgun on the black market. He'd even bragged about the gun to workers at the slaughterhouse, sometimes letting them borrow it for photos. After the murders, neighbors told police that Chong Chun Hua was arrogant, hot-tempered, and disrespectful to his parents. He drained their money whenever he visited, arguing loudly if they refused, and never contributed to the family business. Chong Tong's widow tearfully told police, "After we married, we moved out and only visited the slaughterhouse occasionally to see my mother-in-law and stepfather-in-law. Who could have imagined this visit would end with my husband and son brutally killed? We had no real connection with Chong Chun Hua. Family ties were strained. He never tried to better himself, just leached off the family, lied constantly, and couldn't be trusted." Police believed her statement shed light on a possible motive. Chong Chun Hua may have killed them in a rage after being denied money for drugs. His criminal record backed this up. He'd been arrested 7 times, 5 of which were for drug trafficking. His life had long been entangled in a vicious cycle of crime, a key factor in the tragedy. With Chong Chun Hua identified as the killer, police issued an arrest warrant. Using the car's make and license plate, they tracked it down by 11 a.m. on the day of the crime. Abandoned in a community parking lot in Bukit Mertajam, Penang, 25 kilometers from the crime scene. Plainclothes officers staked out the area, but he never appeared. They checked the car, unlocked with the keys still in the ignition, indicating he'd fled on foot. Around 1 p.m., police received a tip. Chong Chun Hua had shown up at his uncle's house in Kampung Melayu, Penang, 13 kilometers north of the slaughterhouse. Suspecting he'd left the car in Bukit Mertajam to mislead them, police believed he was hiding out in Penang. His sudden arrival terrified his uncle's family. When his cousin opened the door, Chong Chun Hua barged in, demanding money and threatening to kill everyone if they alerted the police or revealed his whereabouts. He even boasted he'd return to kill his biological father and sister-in-law if he got the chance. He then stormed upstairs and locked himself in a room. Besides the uncle and aunt, 2 relatives and some friends were in the house. When his cousin returned from work and learned of the situation, he discreetly texted friends to call the police. To avoid provoking Chong Chun Hua, the family acted calm and quietly slipped out of the house unnoticed. Later, when he came downstairs and found the house empty, he took his uncle's car keys, drove to Nibong Tibel, and bought a phone card at a local shop. There, a neighbor recognized him and urged him to surrender, but he ignored them and left. By 4 p.m. the next day, July 17, 2016, Chong Chun Hua was still driving around Air Item. He visited Kek Lok Si Temple, a massive Buddhist temple at the foot of a local hill, the largest of its kind in Malaysia and a key pilgrimage site for Buddhists from Hong Kong, the Philippines, Singapore, and beyond. Many wondered why a cold-blooded killer who'd slaughtered his own family would visit a temple. Was he seeking forgiveness from Buddha, tormented by guilt, or praying for his victims' souls? No one knew his true thoughts. As he drove down the hill and past a 7-Eleven, his car broke down. He pulled over, waiting for the engine to cool. Wearing a cap, mask, and sunglasses, he walked to a nearby food street, buying beer, nasi lemak, and other snacks. By then, police had tracked his movements and set up a discreet ambush to avoid spooking him. 3 hours later, he returned to the car, checked the engine, and prepared to leave. Suddenly, officers surrounded the vehicle near a coffee shop. They attempted to negotiate, but as one officer approached, Chong Chun Hua pulled his gun and fired. With no chance for talks, the police returned fire. After more than 10 shots, he was killed in the driver's seat. The same gun he'd used to murder his family, now ending his own life. It seemed a fitting end, a consequence of his actions. The car's windshield was riddled with bullet holes, glass scattered everywhere. No officers were injured in the shootout. When Chong Chun Hua's sister heard the news, she rushed from the funeral of her 4 slain relatives to the scene. In just 2 days, she lost 5 family members, an unimaginable heartbreak. Every shocking murder case stirs public outrage, but few are as tragic as family killings, especially when a son turns on his own kin, an act so heinous it defies forgiveness. In response, local schools began intensifying anti-drug campaigns, educating children about the dangers and irreversible harm of drugs, hoping to prevent another life from being destroyed like Chong Chun Hua's. This story ends here. From a criminal psychology perspective, Chong Chun Hua's descent into violence reflects a textbook case of addiction-driven impulsivity and familial dysfunction. His drug dependency, coupled with a lack of accountability and a history of defiance, eroded any moral compass he might have had. The murders weren't just a spontaneous outburst, but the culmination of years of resentment and entitlement, fueled by his inability to break free from substance abuse. It's a stark reminder that untreated addiction and fractured family dynamics can breed not just personal ruin, but catastrophic tragedy. Goodbye, and see you in the next story.